guess with the new regime in Washington, D.C., which we'll be talking about, the trains might be running more on time than in the past. We'll explain that. We're here. This week we are here Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5 p.m. Except we weren't here yesterday, but we will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Please like, follow, and share the show. We will be next week inaugurating our daily schedule, Monday through Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, for people who are not familiar with the days of the week, at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much for supporting the show. You guys are awesome. Since we do have such a short time, John, let's just get into it. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you encountered what's going on in Washington, D.C., where the National Guard has been federalized, and the Washington Metropolitan Police, which is the local police force, has also been federalized by Donald Trump, ostensibly to crack down on street crime.
Yeah, the thing is, though, there is no street crime, not in the parts of Washington that Donald Trump is talking about. Yes, there are bad neighborhoods in Washington, just like there are anywhere in any city, regardless of size. But this is a publicity stunt. What makes me so upset today, and I'm smiling because there's one funny component to it too. The cops, plus the National Guard, plus the FBI and ATF and DEA have set up roadblocks on major thoroughfares like 14th Street, which is one of the most important streets in all of Washington. They set up roadblocks, and what are they doing at the roadblocks? They are writing tickets for people who are not wearing their seatbelts. Seriously.
Is that all they're doing?
Dozens. That is it. And they wrote a couple tickets for brake lights being out. The Washington Post is reporting. There was an incident on U Street at 14th and U last night. I was telling Ted before the show started that U Street is kind of famous because it was the center of the Washington jazz scene 100 years ago. It's where Duke Ellington lived and performed, and the Duke Ellington School is there now. Anyway, it's a real hipster area, great restaurants and bars, and it's a little bit seedy, but in a cool way. Anyway, a 38-year-old white man was coming out of a Subway sandwich shop. He saw a bunch of National Guards people, and he called them fascist pigs, and words were exchanged, and he threw his sandwich at one of them. And the sandwich hit the National Guardsman in the shoulder, and he was promptly tackled and arrested. And Jeanine Pirro, of course, being the new U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, called a late-night press conference last night to announce that this deranged criminal had been arrested. He was being charged with a felony count of assaulting a police officer, and that her office would be asking for 10 years in prison. Well, it's led to all these memes being created today. And I told Ted, there's no jury anywhere in Washington that is going to convict this guy of assault on a police officer for throwing a sandwich. But we're in the silly period. And I have to go to the train station right at 5:30 or 5:25 or something like that. And I'm going to have to figure a way around these roadblocks because my train leaves at 6:05 and I don't have time to fool around with these people. But
you better not be. You're not bringing a packed sandwich lunch, are you? With you on the train, because you could be shot.
It's a weapon. It's a weapon. Yeah, it's gotten just nuts already.
I do feel badly for the innocent sandwich.
I too, and I said to you earlier, I hope it was either tuna or meatball. At least then it would be worth it. I hope it's not like salami that's not going to leave a mark.
No, well, not to mention, I love salami.
I do too.
So that's well. So yeah, I liked Jeanine Pirro's statement. She said, "Oh, he thought it was funny, but we charged him with 10 years in prison. Now he doesn't think it's so funny." Oh, Jeanine, you funny. Just made it funnier.
Yeah,
it was always going to be funny. It's not going to ever not be funny. This is up there.
I made a mistake last week, Ted.
This is like when that guy, the Iraqi journalist, threw the shoe at Bush.
Shoe, yeah. Two shoes.
You were saying? Yeah. I interrupted.
I made a mistake last week when I said that the National Guard could only be called out for 3 days before Congress had to approve it. It turns out there's a proviso in the law that says that if Congress is not in session, the 3 days becomes 30 days. So by the time the 30 days is up, Congress will be back in session, and then Trump can make his case for renewing for another 30 days. the bottom line here on this deployment, I guess we have to call it a deployment, is Donald Trump hates looking out the window and seeing homeless people, right? He hates it, and he wants them all cleared out, and he doesn't care where they go. You can put them in the woods or send them to Maryland or send them to New York, but he does not want homeless people in the parts of Washington where tourists go, which is sick. But, rather than to try to fix the homeless problem, you just throw them out and make them somebody else's problem. That's what we're headed toward.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very different attitude than, look, he wasn't my favorite president, but George H.W. Bush wrote quite eloquently about looking out the window of the White House and seeing a homeless guy sleeping on a grate in the ellipse or near the ellipse between the White House and I don't know what street that is. You would know. And he just said, this is just not right. This is beneath the dignity of the United States of America. And of course, obviously he was right. But there's been I don't think there's ever been a serious attempt to grapple with homelessness at the federal level.
Never.
There's a couple of cities who do a good job. They call it housing first, like in Dallas and Denver. And basically it's condition-free housing. Just come in. If you have a substance or an alcohol abuse problem, no worries. You can keep using. Come in. And of course, obviously, we're going to have counselors help you and social workers help you. Just having a home, just having a roof over your head often goes a long way to making people stop self-medicating.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I want to point out real quickly, too, that Robbie is informing me that Sandwich Man has also been fired from his job.
Oh, yeah. He was a DOJ employee. Yeah.
Oh, my God. A DOJ employee. Oh, my God. The world's gone crazy, or we've gone crazy anyway.
Yeah. I mean, what does it mean, right? I mean, so the fact that, first of all, a heavily armed guy with Kevlar is so pissed that he gets a sandwich thrown at him that he has to go after him. Okay, and then what does it mean? What message, politically is the administration trying to send with such a radical overcharge? Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously they know that people like us are going to make fun of them, and everyone else is going to make fun of them, and the overcharge is only going to draw attention to it.
Yes.
Are they basically just like, is this simply like a "don't fuck with us" move?
Yeah, or that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And like I said, if these guys were going to go to, deep Southeast Washington, which is the highest crime, or deep Northeast Washington as well, the two highest crime areas in the city, and try to straighten the place out and, maybe raid the crack houses or, disrupt shootings or whatever. Okay, great. Good on them. But that's not what they're doing.
No, not at all.
It's all about PR.
I think this is all about normalizing the militarization of American city streets. The LA and the DC, I mean, they're basically standing around. They're not really doing anything, like you say. So what's this? This is about making us used to seeing heavily armed soldiers on the street, the way that if you live in Israel, you're always used to seeing soldiers with, Uzis out on the street. If you're in any number of countries in the developing world, you're used to seeing heavily armed troops or paramilitaries out on the streets. And, I think that's what this is about.
Mm-hmm. I think that's exactly right. Yeah.
Let's talk about, we got to talk about the big story of the day because time is short. I don't want to miss out on it. Putin and Trump meeting today in Anchorage, Alaska. Nicholas Kristof at the New York Times and he's normally one of the more sober Democrats. I thought he had a complete case of Russian derangement syndrome today. He said that the choice of Anchorage, Alaska was a sop to Putin because it used to belong to Russia, and it confirms the idea that borders are fungible. Now, I could interpret it the opposite and say, well, it's actually a diss to Putin because we're forcing him to come to us. Yeah. And also he doesn't get like a 21 gun salute at the White House, and he doesn't get, and also we're rubbing his nose in the fact that we now own former Russian property. I mean, which I don't think that's true either. But I mean, it's just basically looking for stuff to criticize. I think they chose Anchorage because it's sort of halfway in between.
Right. It's going to take Trump probably, 7.5 hours to get there. It's going to take Putin maybe 10 hours to get there. Less than that.
It's either that or Vladivostok, right?
Well, I think you're right. I think, that's right. It's either that or Vladivostok. I think you're right. I think it's kind of, sort of the halfway point. Yeah, that
I'm
makes
sure
no
that's
sense.
what I'm sure that's what it boils down
I
to.
will say today, I was looking at the Russian media today. The Russians are bringing a who's who of their top diplomats and negotiators. So at least from the Russian side, they're taking this very seriously. Sanctions temporarily lifted. Could RT and Sputnik be back on the menu? That is the subject of hours and hours of text messages I have been exchanging all day with my former Sputnik and RT colleagues. There are a lot of hopeful people who were not hopeful yesterday. So
I'm sure
that's what we're pulling for.
Obviously, there's not going to be any deal without that happening, I would think.
Absolutely.
It's one of those things like, I don't think it's a priority. I don't think it's the a priority, but I think nothing gets done without that happening. If that makes sense.
Yes, indeed.
So basically, it looks like this is all going to boil down to mineral rights, right? So Zelensky promised rare earth minerals to Trump if he kept supporting Ukraine. Now Putin's like, I'll see your rare earths and I'll raise you 2 million tons of aluminum that you really need. And so basically, is it going to boil down to an eBay auction for whoever is willing to cough up the most minerals to Trump?
I think so, Ted. But at the same time, they're going to have to throw something at Zelensky. You know, you gotta get Zelensky to a place where he's willing to concede territory. That's the bottom line. Yeah. He's going to have to concede territory.
Right. So he's saying, he is going to have to, right? So I think, what this looks like to me, if it works, John, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, is basically Trump and Putin hash out a deal. Crimea obviously stays with Russia. Donbas pretty much stays with Russia. The probably no NATO membership for Ukraine, which makes sense because they have a disputed border anyway.
Yes.
Zelensky can stay because his own people will get rid of him and send him off to Lake Como. So they can join the EU, no muss, no fuss, and then basically that's it. And then then Trump calls Zelensky and says, "This is it. Take it or leave it. I'll offer you security guarantees if you agree to it, but not if you don't agree to it. And then I'll just cut off all funding and arms. That's it."
It's funny.
It basically looks like.
I think so. And so many people have been saying for so long that Zelensky's weak. Zelensky's in a box. He's in a corner. He can't call the shots. And he actually has a couple of cards in this hand.
What cards are those?
Well, he can just say no, and he can bring the Germans and the French and the rest of the European countries, whether they're NATO or the EU, along with him, and try to isolate Trump. And without a formal agreement ceding this territory, there is no peace, and then Trump fails.
No doubt.
So can I add something? Eric Husso is saying, what about the Ukraine Nazis? Colonel Doug, oh my God, what's the matter with me? You know who I'm talking about. Doug, now I have to look at my phone. McGregor. Colonel Doug McGregor was on Judge Napolitano today, and Napolitano asked him, what about the Ukrainian Nazis or these Nazi units? He said they were decimated early in the fighting. They've been moved far away from the front. They're less
Mariupol, right? They got captured.
That's right. And they're just not, they're not of import. So the Ukrainians have essentially already been denazified, is what he said. And he's kind of pro-Russian. So, look, I always said that you and I both said that denazification was always a throwaway demand. Yeah, it was. We have said that. And it kind of had to be because it's impossible to enforce. Right. You want to see all those Bandera signs ripped off the wall, but that's for the Ukrainians to deal with. That's it. That's right. So, all right. So I guess we need this is really funny. After this meeting, we need an emergency DeProgram live stream this weekend. Perhaps so. We'll see how it goes. John and I are going to be in the same city this weekend. Yes. So we'll both be here in whatever's left in New York after it all boils away in the current heat wave.
So let's see. Did you get a chance to go to Russia when we all were implied with Sputnik?
No, I never went. And I kind of always fished around for an invitation, but
I always
never
fished
got to
for.
go.
I went. I went on my own dime in 2023, and it was great. I mean, yeah. I'd been before, but it was obviously really interesting to go in the current situation after the beginning of the war. The biggest, there were some serious practical concerns, which is even though things were a lot cheaper for tourists than they had been, you had to bring all of your money in cash because your credit cards and your debit cards don't work at all. So, although I found a workaround, but I'm not going to say what that was because it might screw things up for other tourists who go there. But there is a workaround.
Good.
You know, I hope. I don't know if it still might not work anymore, but who knows? Azov had never had more than 2,500 people. Cameron Drawley says it's weird, but it's been blown way out of proportion, in my opinion.
I think that's probably right.
Perhaps, but I mean, you know, how many American military units have swastikas on their uniforms? I mean, not that many. None. You know, like you can be drummed out of the military for being a neo-Nazi.
That's right.
You know, there you might get promoted. So yeah, no, I'm very hopeful. We'll see what happens. Although, frankly, I'm hopeful for this show too. I mean, you know, it's.
I am too. And you know, we're getting to the point, thanks to our fantastic and dedicated listeners and viewers, that we're getting to the point where we may not need a helping hand from RT or from.
That's true, especially if y'all go over to Rumble, rumble.com. Yep. There's the terrible URL. We didn't invent it. The /C thing. Just go to Rumble. If you're not already doing that, we get paid like 80 times more if you go watch us on Rumble. And also there's going to be exclusive content over there. You can either see all Rumble content exclusively for $5, for $10 a month. But if you don't care about Rumble in general, you just want to see us, it's $5 a month. Or if you just watch us over there, it's helpful too. So that's our little sales pitch here. Okay, so let's move on here. So what do you expect from this initial meeting? Some people are reporting this is a getting to know you summit, and that the real thing will be later.
Yeah, they're trying to tamp down expectations, but you know how Trump is. Trump is going to probably throw out this gigantic grand plan to end all conflicts.
I like it.
Yeah, I do too. Just to see what the Russians' response will be. There's never any downside to diplomacy. I've said this for decades. It's never a bad thing to talk to our enemies. Never.
Better to jaw than to war, Churchill said.
Yeah, that's right. We shouldn't expect any giant breakthroughs, but this is the opening of a door. And I hope something good happens.
So is Putin the reticent madman that's being portrayed in the American media?
Nope. Not if he's bringing Lavrov and a stable of seasoned diplomats. No.
And his own self.
Seriously. And his own self. That's right. This is a summit, an actual summit.
Yeah.
So
no, this is too serious. Good. This is a serious thing.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? I mean, I think it's, in a way, I don't think this is complicated. You know, it's like the details of land swaps drawing that border will look like Versailles in 1919. But
yes.
And definitely it's going to be an ugly look for the Ukrainians as their fate is decided, whether they get to stay in their hometown or not, based on the whims of cartographers. So it is going to feel a little bit like British imperialism. But okay, Israel, lots going on there. So basically, Israel's now talking to 5 countries about accepting Gazan refugees, expulsion victims, ethnic cleansing victims. Is this going to go anywhere, John?
No.
I mean,
No, I talked to Miko Pellet about this today for my other podcast. This is literally the definition of ethnic cleansing, which is a form of genocide and is illegal under international law. So no, they tried with the Albanians, they tried with the Indonesians, they tried with the Egyptians and the Saudis. Now they're talking about sending 2 million people to South Sudan, the worst place on earth.
Ridiculous.
You can't do it. It's illegal.
I strongly recommend that people read the latest Ezra Klein transcript that's in the New York Times, where he interviewed a guy who's an expert on the definition of genocide. It's just called "Is It Genocide?" And basically, it just explains the history of how genocide came to be defined as a term before World War II, and then how it got popularized.
Do you know where it came from?
Isn't it from the Armenian genocide or
no? It was a word coined by the father of Robert Morgenthau in 1921. He happened to be on an American ship in the port of Izmir as the Turks were slaughtering Greeks and Armenians, literally slaughtering them. And genos is peoples, right? Genocidi, genocide, is the killing of a people. And so he coined the term in a letter that he was writing to the president. Yeah, in fact, Robert Morgenthau, he was almost like 100 years old. He came to testify before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee when I was working there. And he had to take my arm in the hall, and I walked him to the hearing room. And I said that I had just finished a book called Smyrna 1921. I said, I didn't realize that your father had coined the term genocide. And he said, yes. And on his deathbed, he said that was the thing that he was the most proud of.
That's cool.
Isn't that cool?
The definition of genocide is not just, death camps like Auschwitz. It's,
right.
It can include that, of course, but it's also about making it impossible for people to live in a certain place. You could have a genocide that might not kill anyone.
That's right. Like forcing them to move to South Sudan. And Eric has a question here too. Odds that Israel attacks Iran again. Eric, I have moved dramatically over the past week, especially after reading Trita Parsi's piece on Substack a couple of days ago. I think the chances are very good that Israel is going to attack Iran in the next 3 weeks. It'll be before the end
for
of the
distraction
month.
Purposes to scuttle any peace talks, to force Trump to come to heel.
Exactly.
Will it work? I mean,
God,
if you're Trump, you've got to be like, you got to see right through that. I mean, that's the kind of thing that Trump would do. Therefore, I would think that Trump would recognize it.
I think he probably would.
You know what I mean? It's like, don't bullshit a bullshitter.
That's right. I hope that's the case. I'm worried.
Also, so these 5 countries would all be viewed as complicit in genocide. So they're just, why are they talking to the Israelis at all?
And Ted, a lot of them haven't actually been asked. Like the Indonesians are like, whoa, we never
First
said
we've heard of it.
Yeah, we're not giving up an island for 2 million Palestinians to come. No. And the Albanians are like, are you kidding us? We're the poorest country in Europe, and you want to send 2 million more people here?
That's insane. Well, I'm sure they would love to divvy them up, kind of like, the U.S. divvied up the Guantanamo victims. But, there were only a few hundred of those.
Yeah, and some got lucky and some got unlucky. Some went to Switzerland, some went to Albania.
Right. Yeah, some went to Bermuda.
Some went to Tahiti. Yeah, a couple more went to, Bangladesh. So it's the luck of the draw.
We got to talk about this Sumi Terry story. This is your wheelhouse. This is your bailiwick. John, take it away.
Oh, okay. And I have 1 minute because I got to go.
Okay.
Sumi Terry, who I had forgotten until Robbie reminded us, is the wife of Max Boot. And she is now...
formerly of the Wall Street Journal.
That's right. So I'm gonna get the exact...
He was my editor at the Wall Street Journal for a time.
She's a big deal. So she's being charged with spying for South Korea. And this is going to be a real stretch, it seems to me, Ted, because she's widely respected, she's providing analysis. The Justice Department is saying that, actually, I'm going to pull it up. She's been charged with multiple offenses, not under the Espionage Act, but under the FARA Act, Foreign Agents Registration Act, which means that, oh my God, she forgot to fill out a form on the internet. That makes it a felony. Now, that calls for a sentence of 0 to 6 months, first offense. On FARA, the Justice Department doesn't care what it is. Maria, what's her face from Russia? Thank you. was convicted of failing to file. And even though it was 0 to 6 months recommendation, she got 18 months in solitary confinement. So I don't know why the CIA is demanding that these charges be pursued. I think it's kind of nuts. And I'm no friend of Max Boots. I never.
Do you think she's guilty?
She may be guilty of, laziness. And like I say, the crime literally is failing to fill out a form on the internet. Literally.
That's sort of like, we talked about RT and Sputnik. That's something that like under the, what is that thing called? The FARA. Like they had to fill out a form every single day. Yeah.
And I'm going to apologize to our viewers. I've got to run. I have to dodge these roadblocks and get to the train station.
John, go with God. I'll see you this weekend.
Thank you. And I'll see you tomorrow.
At the you-know-where. And,
that's right. Yeah. See you at the you-know-where. I'll be there.
All right. Cool.
Thanks.
And we'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m., right? You're still good for tomorrow at 5? Okay, cool. Thanks, John. John's going to take off. I'm going to stick around. There was a request from inside the chat here on both the Rumble and on YouTube to do a Q&A with me once John leaves. So if anybody's interested in doing that, I'll stick around as long as people are interested in doing that. Okay, all right. Okay, first, Clovis overrules us all. Clovis is my cat, so if he blesses us with his presence, I'm looking around. I don't see him. Okay, so I'm being requested here for the LA Times story debacle. All right, I will tell that story as short and as sweet as I possibly can, because it is a very long and complicated ordeal. But the long story short is, in 2009, I was hired as the staff cartoonist at the LA Times. It was honestly, just like one of the biggest breaks you could ever get, especially at a time when the industry was falling apart. 2009, was during the global recession and newspapers were hit super hard. So I was really lucky to get the gig. I was very excited about it. And anyway, I worked there without incident between 2009 and 2015. Now, what that entailed was every 2-3 days, I drew a cartoon for the LA Times. And then this is important, about 2012 or so, they called me and said, would you be willing to write a blog that would go with the cartoon that would sort of explain sort of how you came up with your cartoon, maybe the background of the topic or whatnot. And I said, sure. They were like, we'll pay you a little more money. And I was like, fine. So anyway, my routine was like every single week, I would send my editor a couple of ideas. She would choose one, and then I would draw it, and I would write up a blog, and they would publish it, and that was it. And I went to visit a few times. I also went to Afghanistan for the LA Times and did comics journalism from there in 2010. Part of that ended up in my book, After We Kill You, We Will Welcome U.S. Honored Guests. But it was a great relationship. I want to be very clear here. There was never any tension or friction whatsoever. I got along great with all of my editors. I basically dealt with 3 editors except when one editor Nick Goldberg, who was the Uber editor, would call, every now and then when all the other 3 were out, and he would take care of it. So, anyway, unbeknownst to me, in 2014, the LAPD pension fund purchased controlling interest in a company called Tronc, which was also known as Tribune Publishing, which was the parent company of the LA Times and 14 other newspapers, including the Chicago Tribune and the Baltimore Sun, the Orlando Sentinel. I forget all the whole long list. But I didn't know about any of this. But the LAPD told the LA Times, we're really pissed at Ted Rall because every now and then he draws cartoons that make fun of the police chief, Charlie Beck, and make fun of the LAPD. But nobody ever told me, cut it out, leave the LAPD alone. If they had, I got to be honest, I'm not like John. I probably would have said like, okay, there's lots of other stuff to draw about. I mean, there's always limits in journalism. I'm sure you wouldn't be smart to criticize Jeff Bezos if you were at the Washington Post. So but out of ignorance, just kept doing my thing. And every now and then I did cartoons against the LAPD, which is the nation's, most militarized police force and, guilty of a lot of violence, obviously. So anyway, the summer of 2015 rolls around. I'm with my kid at a county fair, riding a Ferris wheel. It's 8:00 at night. I get a call, East Coast time. I get a call from Nick Goldberg from the LA Times, and he says, "Ted, what's going on?" And I'm like, "Nick, I don't know what you're talking about." And he's like, "Well, the LAPD is questioning, an account of an incident that occurred in 2001. What he was talking about was a cartoon that had run many months before that was basically about how the LAPD was going against jaywalking. And I said, I wrote a blog that went with it. And I said, this time it's personal. Back in 2001, I was on Bill Maher's show, Politically Incorrect. I was walking in West Hollywood from CBS Television City up to Melrose Boulevard to have dinner with some friends. I was crossing the street, by the way, in the crosswalk with the green light, with the little walking guy, and a motorcycle cop arrested me, handcuffed me, roughed me up, wrote me a misdemeanor citation for jaywalking. Obviously, the guy had a quota to fill. I was furious about this because I hadn't done anything wrong. There was an angry crowd, yelling at the cop, and there was quite a scene going on. And finally, ultimately, his partner showed up on a motorcycle and told him, "What the fuck are you doing? Let's get out of here." And so then he uncuffed me and gave me the ticket, threw my driver's license into the gutter, and drove off. So I filed a formal complaint with Internal Affairs. Nothing ever came of it. Never heard from them, and I forgot all about it. But I did write about this when I read about the jaywalking crackdown, to just say how stupid, as a New Yorker, jaywalking is not enforced here. And it was just one of these things about like, how do I, how can they do this? And this is what happened to me. If it can happen to me, it can happen to you, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the LAPD went into their old files, dug up my old complaint with Internal Affairs, and they called the LAPD and they said, "We secretly audio taped back in 2001 Ted Rall's interaction with the police officer who arrested him and handcuffed him. But he was never handcuffed. The cop was always polite. He was never roughed up. There was never a crowd of angry people. Ted Rall made the whole thing up." So under basically what they were accusing me of, and what the LA Times agreed that I had done, was that I had lied in print. So this wasn't true. Of course, I remembered it very vividly and I knew what had happened, but there's no way to prove a negative, right? So the investigative reporter for the LA Times, a guy named Paul Pringle, who has since characterized himself as a voice of reason in Southern California journalism, and even wrote a book, pretty well received a few years ago, about it, calls me up and he's like, "Listen, I'm going to send you the recording of this interaction, and it proves that what you said happened didn't happen." So he sends it to me. It's about six and a half minutes long. You can find it on the internet. I posted it on the internet, and all you can hear is static. It's literally like, and you can hear that there might be some voices in the background, but you can't recognize them. I couldn't even recognize my own voice. You really can't hear anything. And Paul Pringle goes, "See, there's no sound of handcuffs going on. There's no sound of an angry crowd. There's no indication that the cop ever was rude to you." And I'm like, this thing doesn't show anything. It could have space aliens on it. But he didn't, the fix was clearly in. Long story short, Nick Goldberg fires me. They print an article in the LA Times calling me a liar and a fabulist to explain my firing. And clearly the goal here was to not only get rid of me, but also to make sure I would never work in journalism again. A few days later, I get a fan who writes to me and says, I've been reading about this. This is a big national story. It's on Fox News. It's on the AP. It's all over the place. Ted Rall fired for making up stories about poor, innocent LAPD. So I'm completely desperate. I think my career is completely destroyed. And anyway, this fan writes and says, have you ever heard of audio enhancement technology? And audio enhancement is basically where you can strip away noise and maybe reveal what's underneath the noise. So can you please send, so this guy was like, I know a guy who knows a guy. Long story short, 3 different people did enhancements, and they all ended up getting the same results, which was once you cleared away the noise, it was still pretty crappy, but you could hear, among other things, people screaming at the police officer, let him go, why are you hurting him, take off his handcuffs, and so on. It all vindicated my side of the story. Nothing vindicated the LAPD side of the story. I sent this audio recording to the LA Times figuring it's going to be fine. They're going to see reason. Obviously, there's no reason for them to go on. But what I didn't realize was that there was this power dynamic where LAPD chief Charlie Beck had secretly met with Austin Butner, who was a former mayoral candidate. He was a hedge fund billionaire, the publisher of the LA Times, who had been installed by the LAPD pension fund as publisher in 2014. They even gave him, as soon as he, in the same way that Obama won the Nobel for Peace Prize 6 months after being president, just basically for being a Democrat and for being black, Austin Butner won the LAPD Badge and Eagle Award for service to the LAPD just for being the publisher of the LA Times. Parenthetically, you're not supposed to, as an employee of the LA Times, accept any kind of awards whatsoever from any agency other than something like the Pulitzers, a journalistic organization, which obviously the LAPD is not. You're certainly not supposed to accept favors from the government. Anyway, long story short, I post all this to my blog. I write about it in my syndicated column. A news website called A New Domain goes out, team all over it. It ultimately winds its way through The Guardian. The New York Observer, owned by Jared Kushner at the time, decides to do their own enhancement. Everyone ends up basically on my side and against the LAPD, the LA Times. The LA Times 3 weeks later decides to double down with yet another smear piece saying, well, okay, this time we hired our own enhancement people, and they say that Ted Rall's stuff isn't there. Well, first of all, there's no Ted Rall stuff. This is other people, professionals who found this information. And then so my friend who's at A New Domain, she's like, I went to school with this guy, this audio enhancement expert that the LA Times is citing. It doesn't sound like he would say something like this, that he would make things up. She calls him up. She calls me back 2 hours later. She said, Ted, you better be sitting down. I just got off the phone with Paul Grigoris, I think was his name. And he says, the LA Times never hired me. They lied about me. They made up a quote to say that I had said there was nothing there. I never said anything of the kind. The LA Times basically just made this up and used my name. And now my reputation is smeared because everyone thinks that I'm the stooge of the LA Times and the LAPD. LA Times is embroiled in this massive scandal in August of September of 2015. After a while, they had to shut down all of the comment sections to the LA Times website because even in the sports section, people were posting comments like, yeah, you say the Packers won, but what does the LAPD say happened at the game? So anyway, this went on for years. I sued in the LA trial court. The fix was in every single step of the way. And I kind of feel bad because there's questions piling up here, and I can go on and talk about the court procedure. But basically, this story involves everyone from Governor Gavin Newsom to Tom Girardi, the disgraced lawyer who was married to Real Housewives of Beverly Hills Erica Jane, to my judge who was having an affair with Tom Girardi, who was also friends with Charlie Beck. It's an incestuous snake pit politically over there. Anyway, that's the short version of what happened. Needless to say, ultimately, Gavin Newsom overruled the California Supreme Court, had my case thrown out. And that's kind of like where that went down 5 years later. I currently have a judgment for $1.2 million in legal fees against me in the state of California because basically the court decided, they decided to award the LA Times their legal fees because they're the poor innocent victims of Ted Rall, who was trying to censor them. Okay, what was my beef? Reed wants to know, what was my beef with Ann Coulter? Ann Coulter jokingly, said, hey, Ted Rall entered the anti-Semitic Iranian cartoon contest. Okay, I didn't. So I was really furious about this, and I did threaten to sue her. I put it out. I asked people, if I sue her, would you help back me up financially? I collected a lot of pledges, but then when I talked to lawyers, they said I'd never win. She's protected by First Amendment and satire, just as I am. And I guess unless I'm going after the LAPD. And so therefore, I decided not to pursue it, as I said in public. And I think it was really reckless. She basically accused me of consorting with terrorists and being an anti-Semite. So I was really, really furious here. Okay. Starline wants to know, how do I feel about Ayn Rand? Two-part question. First, as an author. Second, as a lecherous old woman who preyed on young male college libertarians. I'm not a fan of her writing. I definitely understand the appeal to the people who she appeals to. I think she's talented, but she's not my cup of tea at all. As someone who's always kind of had a fondness for older women, I don't think that those young male college libertarians were victimized in any way, shape, or form. When I was, they were over 18 years old. They're consenting adults, and she probably taught them a lot, and, good for them. But if they're under 18, then I feel very differently about it. I mean, when I was 20, I had a over 60 girlfriend for a time, so I'm biased there. Okay, we've got a few more questions here. Okay, over on the Rumble feed, Nadia Margaret wants to know, do I draw by hand or do I use a graphic tablet? Draw by hand. Here's a cartoon that I'm working on right now. This is how I draw them, like pen and ink. It's just on Bristol board. Here's the pen. I draw it black and white like this, and then when it's done, I scan it into Photoshop and to add the colors and make any mistakes that fixed in Photoshop. Okay, how do I get in? Rax0527 on Rumble wants to know, how do I get into politics? I'm 16 in Arkansas, and I really want to be more involved in anything. Helps also to love your content. I've been watching you since you guys started. Thank you so much, Rax. Much appreciated. So how do you want to be more involved? Well, I mean, it depends on, if you want to be involved in one of the two major parties, the best thing to do is to go to the local party headquarters or the party headquarters of one of the candidates, and get to volunteer for a campaign and work for it. If you're more interested in activist politics outside of electoral politics, find an organization that speaks to you and just reach out and say, hey, what are you guys doing? Do you have any meetings? Do you have any literature I can read? That's what I did when I was a kid. I went to work. I was 10 years old and I worked for the McGovern campaign with my mom. Oh, I didn't reach out. She did that. But I did phone bank for Jimmy Carter. And then I moved to the left after Michael Dukakis. I was a New York youth coordinator for Dukakis when I was 25 in 1988. And I decided that I really just couldn't stand electoral democratic politics internally anymore, and that I was to the left of that. And I migrated. But, you do you, and just basically keep an eye out for people who appeal to you that way. So many questions. Okay. Hardeen66 wants to know, do you have any concerns about how the media is currently used within the U.S.? As from the outside, it looks like it's all propaganda for political gain, as opposed to informing the public. Well, yeah. Do we have 10 hours? We're not going to be able to get to all that. But yes, obviously so much of the media is propaganda, and it's very dangerous. It literally leads to people dying in wars. I mean, think about currently what's going on in Israel. U.S. support for Israel is without any filter at all. There's no restraint whatsoever. And as a result, hundreds of thousands, and it is hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have lost their lives. Many more have been severely traumatized. They're going to ethnically cleanse the entire strip if they get away with it. And they're doing that because of the media, not only in Israel, which is strictly controlled and self-controlled, but also here in the United States, because we're paying the bill, and we're only paying the bill because the political support is generated by American propaganda. So yeah, no doubt about it. It's a terrible, terrible thing. All right, so let's talk about what's my opinion on Georgism and taxing the unimproved value of land. I need more details on that, Tom. I have to admit, no opinion at all. Was the 2001 jaywalking before or after 9/11? Good question, Starlion. It was actually after 9/11. It was in when was this? This was it was literally, I think, 3 weeks after 9/11. I think it was something like October 4th or so, 2001. And in fact, one of the things that the people in the crowd yelled at the cop was, what's wrong with you? Don't you have anything better to do with everything that's going on? And that was a reference to 9/11. It was the corruption in what was called the West Traffic Bureau was thick and thin. In fact, a group of dissident LAPD officers were furious at being told that they had to write tickets even to people who had not done anything wrong, because they were just trying to generate revenue for the city, and they had sued at the same time. Now, so those people, the dissident cops, they were being passed over for promotion and denied raises all the time. Meanwhile, my cop, Will Durr, was constantly being promoted and told that, and being given great reviews because he was a corrupt police officer. Okay, let's talk about another wonderful secret. Wants to know Trump's been out on bail since August 2023. $200,000 in his active Georgia criminal case. Looks like he'll be held accountable after his term. That case isn't going to just magically disappear. Very true. Very, very true. In my experience, which side has more grifters and hypocrites? Reed wants to know. Liberal or conservative media? Well, I'm biased because I come from the left, so I pay more attention to the liberals than to the conservatives. You always police your own side more than you police the other side. But I pay more attention to the liberals and the Democrats. And, I would have to say there's more true believers, I think, on the right than there are in mainstream left media. You're not really getting the whole story. Like most of the New York Times editorial page, they're like me, they're socialists, but they can't admit it. They're just trying to cash a paycheck, and they'll tell you, like, over drinks, the real deal. But, they just don't want to do that. Here we go. Starlion, lying in print next to plagiarism, the fastest way to destroy a career in publishing. Yes. What's my prediction about the Gaza genocide war going to end? Ka Punked wants to know. Netanyahu in jail? Will the UN finally interfere? Or is the ethnic cleansing going to continue? It's really, really hard to say. But clearly, Israel is completely a cornered animal increasingly. So, this is going to go one of two ways. Either of them is going to be extreme. Netanyahu could end up in jail on those domestic political charges. I would love to see him arrested and brought up to The Hague, where he belongs, to be held accountable for what he's doing and what Israel is doing in general. Not just him, but all of the top Israeli commanders and government and ministry, the war ministry, the war cabinet members should all be brought up. Will the UN finally interfere? I think that's extremely doubtful, just because the UN doesn't have a great history of bringing in white helmets to put an end to genocide. They weren't there for Rwanda in any meaningful way. I don't think they're going to be there in any meaningful way. The ethnic cleansing is going to continue. I don't think any other country is going to take them, the Palestinians, and I don't think they should, because that would be enabling genocide. So I think that's going to, I don't have an easy prediction there. I'm really, really, really sorry. As someone who has heard recently about feds in journalism, do you know or how feds operate in journalism when they infiltrate? Well, it's hard to say, right? I mean, the thing is that to me, the danger isn't really secret agents in journalism. To me, the danger is the chummy relationships that take place in Washington and around the world, where basically, a journalist makes friends and with politicians and federal government and federal and state and local politicians and hangs with them and likes them. And this is why the embedding program in the military is so incredibly toxic. It shouldn't be permitted at all because it crosses that line. Journalists should be completely independent. You shouldn't be able to have any personal relationship whatsoever with the people that you're covering. I mean, I think that's a big duh. I think most people would agree with it, and yet it happens all the time. Starlion is saying there's a guy who used to work in LAPD intelligence, Roth Miller, did a good interview on Gates, the history of the Red Squad and the Intelligence Division. All right, I'll have to check that out. Let's see. What's the thing I have with Newsom that makes him look bad? Starlion wants to know. Okay, I'll fess. So my case works its way up to the California Supreme Court. This is right during at the very beginning of the pandemic in 2020. And they say, we are going to rule unanimously in Ted Rall's favor. The money quote is from the initial ruling. This appears to be one of the most egregious examples of corruption in the history of the state of California. My lawyers and I are completely ecstatic and thrilled. And they say, but the courts are about to shut down for months, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. The whole country's going on lockdown. We're all going away. We'll get back to you. So to issue the final ruling. On April 1st, and I think this is an interesting choice of date, suddenly they, without comment, after issuing this detailed, fulsome declamation of the LAPD and the LA Times and corruption in Southern California, the court reverses itself from 5-0 to 0-5 against me. No comment in an uncertified decision like Bush v. Gore. That means it's a decision that can never be used as a precedent in a California court because they know it's bad law and because it's political. And anyway, the very next day, I learned that two things. Number one, all of the cases against the LA Times have magically vanished at the California Supreme Court ruling level. Number two, Gavin Newsom holds a press conference with Dr. Pat Soon-Shiong, the new owner of the LA Times, in LA, announcing that he will reopen the hospitals that he closed in order to treat California COVID patients. So obviously there was a quid pro quo here. I'll reopen my hospitals if you get rid of these meddlesome people, plaintiffs in the various age discrimination, libel, and other lawsuits against the LA Times from the previous regime. Dr. Pat, you could have called and we could have just worked it out. I would have settled for an apology. I didn't need money. I needed a retraction. But when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and that's what Dr. Pat did. So Gavin Newsom put his thumb on the scale. There's no question in my mind at all. And I think anybody who looks at it would see the same thing that I saw. And I swear to God, if he runs for president, I'm going to make it my business to make sure that California journalists go after him and get all the duty, everything there. All right. So what's the line between satire and defamation? Well, that's for the courts to decide. But I think defamation is when you say something that could credibly be construed as true and is construed as damaging. I mean, so if I lie about what you wear, that's not really, it might not be true, but it doesn't make it defamatory. But a good example of defamation would be, let's say, context matters. So let's say you accuse me of not washing my hands after I go to the bathroom. It's probably, it's not true, or it might be true, but it's not really defamatory because who cares if a cartoonist or a podcaster washes their hands after they go to the bathroom. But let's say I'm a butcher, it would completely destroy my line of work. So in that instance, that could be defamatory if you falsely allege that I don't wash my hands after I go to the bathroom. Now, let's say I do something and that implies that satirically that a butcher doesn't wash his hands, but it's clearly a joke. That's satire. If it's not clearly a joke, like Ann Coulter, that's defamation. All right, let's see what else we got here. And you do have to, so there's two kinds. You have to, defamation has to be untrue, correct. And you have to prove damages probably. That's correct too. There's two kinds of defamation. There's defamation, regular defamation, which you do have to prove actual damages, like what jobs did you lose, what jobs did you not get. That's very hard to do. Then there's defamation per se, which is a higher standard, but you don't have to, all you have to prove is that it was said. You don't have to prove that it cost you any money. That would be something like, for example, you accuse someone of being a pedophile and they are a scoutmaster. You don't need to prove actual damages. It's so outrageous, if it's not true, that would be defamation per se in most courts. I don't know if George R.R. Martin will ever finish his books, but I'm going to guess probably not. He's been really slow. All right, let's see what else. Do I think Zachary Beard on Rumble think the U.S. will ever ratify the Rome Statute and subject itself to the ICC? No, the U.S. is a criminal organization, and therefore it will never do that, I think. How can I send you a copy of my graphic novel? Do I have a P.O. box? I do have a P.O. box. It is on my website. Go to rawl.com/contact, and it's right there. So go check that out. Let's see. On which issues do John and I disagree the most? John and I tend to agree about a lot of things. He's probably. I'm gonna have to think about that one. I don't really. We definitely aren't the same person, and we have different backgrounds. I'm betting that he might have a little more affection for the government than I do, but they betrayed him. I don't know. I'm spitting here. It's like I'd like to say we disagree about a lot of things, but I don't think that's really true. So I'm not going to just make that up here. All right. So thank you very much, Marble455, for that generous donation. Let's see. Can you take your case to the U.S. Supreme Court? Yes, but so we did appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, and it's a complicated thing. Justice Clarence Thomas indicated that he was very interested in my case, and I'll take, like John, I'll take my friends wherever I can find them. The irony is that when we counted the votes on the Supreme Court, the liberals were going to go against me because they're in favor of the anti-SLAPP statute that the LA Times abused to go after me. If you watch, everybody in the establishment loves the anti-SLAPP law. This is the same thing that the New York Times used to screw over Sarah Palin. Anyway, Thomas was interested in taking the case, but we realized that if we got before the U.S. Supreme Court, and believe me, I would love to be talking to Nina Totenberg on NPR about my case, we would have lost probably by 6-3, and then the shitty thing that happened to me would be codified in federal law and would apply to everyone in the country, so it could happen over and over again. And so one of the things you don't want to do is if you make they say bad cases make bad law. They don't mean that the case involves a bad person. They mean that a case like mine, where it's novel and strange, can lead to a really bad judicial verdict that can end up being abused by the powers that be. No, I've never watched The Expanse. Don't know about it. Who are the good Democrats in the party right now? No, there aren't any. Okay, I'll check out Continuum. And okay, I'm trying to think. I think we are probably, okay, Starlion saying it's the most Occupy Wall Street show I've ever seen, other than Mr. Robot, another great thinking man's show. That's high praise. I will have to check that out. I've been wanting to watch Alien Earth, but I don't have the channel that it's on. I've been watching old episodes of what's that show called? Banshee. It's trashy, but kind of fun, for sure. And Mr. Robot too. Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, we'll do one more here. What do I think of Obama contacting Mamdani a few days ago? I'm so happy, Cameron, that you brought this up, because it really made my blood boil. So one of the things that when I was a kid, I got bullied a lot in elementary school and in junior high school, not in elementary school as much. And I was walking home with a guy who lived in my neighborhood, and we were friends and we played together. And like one time we're walking back and he had something to tell me. And he's like, Ted, would you do me a favor and just not acknowledge that we're friends at school? Because, you're unpopular and no one likes you. I don't want to be seen as your friend. So I had enough pride at that point to say, you know what? No, I don't want to be your friend anymore. You can't be my friend in public. I don't want to be your friend at all. Obama calling Mamdani the other day on the DL really reminded me of that. Barry, where the hell is your endorsement? Zohran Mamdani is the Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York, and he's almost certainly going to win in the general election. But he's the Democratic candidate. You should endorse him no matter what. And he didn't do that. So he's trying to have it both ways. Like, oh, I'm going to be the eminence grise. I'm going to call Mamdani behind the scenes, and it's going to and blah blah blah. And it got leaked out to the New York Times and other places. And he gave him some gentle advice. You know what? Mamdani doesn't need your advice. I mean, he really doesn't need anything from Obama. But what he really needs, if he needs anything, is his endorsement. Something that he hasn't gotten from Hakeem Jeffries or from Governor Hochul. All the top Democrats are freezing him out. So screw him. I think it's disgusting. Screw Obama. I hate that. I love this story. Okay, Reed, great question. What was Barry like at Columbia? Let me tell my Columbia story. Okay, I don't know if you've heard this before, but it's a good story, so it's worth repeating. So when I was a sophomore at Columbia, I lived at a dorm called BHR, Brooks, what was something Reed, BHR. Anyway, Hewitt, Brooks Hewitt Reed. And when I was, and so I lived on the first floor, room 146 Hewitt, and kind of like down the hall, but also on the first floor, was the Black Students Organization. And, there weren't that many Black students at Columbia, and they kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. It was a very, very white school at the time. And I noticed this one kid who was at a very unusual look and had a fro, hanging out a lot. And one time I walked by and I noticed him being dressed down by the president of the BSO. And I overheard him say, and I'll never forget it, he said, Barry, you can't come around here anymore. You're always coming around here scamming on girls. But when it comes to putting up and throwing down and participating in the struggle, we can never count on you. You're going to have to decide who you are. And this was at the time when there was the the South Africa divestment struggle at Columbia and other schools around the country. And basically the left on campus was focused on that. And the BSO, as you can imagine, was front and center there. And so basically, when he emerged, I forgot all about Barry Obama until I read in, I guess, the early 2000s in Time or Newsweek that there was this up-and-coming state legislator in Illinois. And I'll forget your name, but I'll remember your face forever. And I was like, oh, my God, that's the guy I went to school with back then. I was in the convention hall in 2004 when he gave his big speech. And, he's a man who's always been full of shit. When he emerged in 2007 as running against the stupid war in Iraq for the smart war in Afghanistan, I decided to look into his voting record. Now, Obama voted 6 out of 6 times to fund the war. 6 out of 6 times. That's when I realized he was full of shit. Full disclosure, I voted for John Edwards in the primaries, even though John Edwards had already dropped out of the race here by the time the New York primary happened in 2008. So, yeah, I saw Obama. I wouldn't say, define a lot. He's one of those people that, you just see sometimes. And he was a very striking dude. So, yeah, I don't know how many times I saw him. I guess that's a lot if you can't really count it. Barry never changed, Manya. That's really right. Who have I voted for in the last elections? Last few elections, I voted for Green Party, Dr. Jill Stein in the last election. I voted for Howie Hawkins in the 2020 race. I voted for Dr. Stein in 2016 as well. And I think it was, if Ralph Nader was running in 2012, I think he was. I think I voted for him. I think that's exactly right. Okay, so there we go. Okay, oh, wait, all right, there's more. Yellow Banana wants to know, if we go back to 2008, would you change any presidential results between the two candidates? All right, so this was John McCain versus Barack Obama. Well, I mean, yeah, well, between the two candidates. It's a good question. I mean, I hated John McCain. He was a warmonger, a reprehensible figure. I was really, truly terrified of what would happen if Sarah Palin became president. And I thought John McCain was like 5 seconds away from dropping dead. So, I guess I'm agnostic about that. I think in the end, it wouldn't have made any real difference if McCain had won. Obama turned out to be a massive warmonger too. He ended up not delivering on his key promise for a public option in the Affordable Care Act. And he betrayed us all. I mean, I wrote a book all about his betrayals called The Book of Obama. And, he was a remarkably right-wing man who's passed off, but he plays a liberal on TV. Disgusting. Thanks, Reed. Thanks, Star. Appreciate it. Voting for a third party. Cameron wants to know, what's the thought process behind if you know they'll never win or change much? Well, first of all, I don't want them to change. I want them to win. The way I look at it is voting is really a very simple act. You vote for the candidate or party that you'd like to see win. And if you don't want to see them, if you wake up on election day and your person wins and you're not excited, you shouldn't have voted for them. And so, people talk about, we need a third party. Everyone agrees we need a third party, or a fourth or a fifth or a sixth. Well, okay, so if you believe that, then support them, give them money, volunteer for them, and vote for them. And if you don't believe that, then don't say you believe in a third party. I mean, voting strategically is also inane and stupid, because literally there is zero chance that your one vote, which is all you can control, is going to change the outcome in any state at all, much less a key swing state. But there's no way. And people will say, well, if everybody thinks that way, okay, but the point is you can only control yourself. We can't, we do work in as a group, but we work as a group individually. So I just don't think that it's like that. Yes, indeed. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Much appreciated. Okay, and I think now I'm going to call it, because this is a full show. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching and following the show. John Kiriakou and I will both be back for a full show tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be back next week, Monday through Friday, but don't miss tomorrow. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about after Trump and Putin have their meeting. I have a feeling we'll probably have a statement from them before the show comes out, what with the time difference and everything. Thank you all for tuning in. Please consider buying my latest book, What's Left. It's called Never Mind the Democrats. What's Left is basically what should a real left demand. In other words, they're not. And really appreciate you. Like, follow, and share the show. See you tomorrow.